This is Real Estate Rookie episode 230.
I think when a lot of people start shopping for investment property, especially the rookie investor that's just building out their criteria, it's okay not to have all of your criteria in the very beginning because I think that's a dynamic process. But often they're looking at pro formas and looking at properties and saying, trying to match that to make sense for them instead of coming up with their criteria first. And I think you build that over time. But it's all about taking action at the end of the day and critiquing your investing goals.
My name is Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, where every week, twice a week, we bring you the inspiration, information, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And we always like to start these episodes by shouting out some folks from the rookie audience. And this week, we want to give a shout out to someone who left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This is Big Brown Investor. So this person said, I'm a motivated rookie, and I just wanted to say this is by far the greatest platform I utilize on a daily basis. The information you guys provide for a rookie investor is so invaluable. I look forward to getting my first property. Thank you, with 3 praise hand emojis. So Big Brown Investor, we appreciate you. And if you haven't yet, please do leave us an honest rating and review on whatever podcast platform it is you listen to. So Ashley Kerr, what's up? How are you?
And if you leave us a 5-star review, Tony will read it.
I will read it. Yeah. If you leave a 1-star review, I will delete it. So
I wish you could actually do that, but instead I will just be crying.
Yeah.
So we are at the BiggerPockets Conference live in San Diego.
Beautiful sunny San Diego. This is like the dopest backdrop for a podcast I think I've ever seen. So moving forward, we've already told the BiggerPockets crew that we're only recording podcasts in this room moving forward. So we need you guys to leave a bunch of 5-star reviews for this episode specifically and talk about how much you love the backdrop. That way we can keep this going.
And we're trying to figure out how to fit this in the back of Tony's car. Did you bring your truck?
I did bring the truck.
Okay, perfect.
I did bring the truck.
We're loaded this thing into the back and taking it home.
But we're excited, right? It's cool to be here. At BPCon, there's so much energy. I walked into the morning session this morning and it was like a sea of people. Mm-hmm. It was so crazy to have so many investors kind of all in the same space, here to learn, here to network. It's been fantastic.
So last night it officially started with a kickoff party, an event. And then today is all day sessions, tomorrow sessions, and another ending party. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I've already met so many people, learned a ton of things just from walking around the hotel, going on yacht parties. Coming in just a day early. You're even. Right. So I think if you are going to some kind of conference and event, either maybe come in a day early or stay a day late to you do even more networking out of the conference setting, because that's so overwhelming getting into the conference setting, meeting people, you're trying to get to your breakout session, things like that. But
when you can come early and share a drink with someone and just get to know them in a more relaxed setting, it makes the rest of the conference so much more enjoyable, because now you've got that buddy you're going to be hanging out with. And I remember one of the first big conferences I went to, I bumped into a friend that I had met at a meetup a few months before. And I hadn't seen him since the meetup. We met at that conference. Just by chance, we both ended up going there. We spent that whole weekend together. And then he was actually the person that introduced me into short-term rentals. So it's you never know where these networking opportunities are going to take you or the impact they'll have on you.
I agree. So our first guest that we're having on today is going to help us with the rookie replies.
Yes.
So we are excited to have Zach on today. He is from Rent to Retirement, and he is going to help us answer the rookie reply questions.
Yeah, and Zach, he's got a really crazy backstory. He was interviewed on the OG podcast. We'll link his episode in the OG podcast in the show notes, but he's built Rent to Retirement to be this really big company. But even before that, he had a pretty wild ride as an investor himself. So anyway, we brought him on to kind of talk turnkey properties and just some other issues that rookies might be dealing with that his expertise could lend itself to.
We know that on Saturdays you guys get sick of Tony's, dry, monotone voice, my laugh. So we thought it would be great to have somebody else come in and answer some questions to really break it up. Yeah. So let's bring Zach onto the show.
So Zach, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you, brother.
So excited to be here, man. This is BPCon. Just awesome. Pleasure's all mine, Tony.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to jump into some questions we have from the rookie audience. The first one comes from Heidi G. Kaywood. And Heidi's question is, can someone explain a non-HELOC line of credit? We've been told to check into a commercial line of credit to have cash for off-market purchases. We're looking at 4 to 5 doors. We have about $600,000 in equity across our rentals with no mortgages on them. but I don't have a firm grasp of requirements and a process for commercial lines of credit. So what is your insights, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a loaded question. I think historically, in our experience with commercial lines of credit or business lines of credit, which is not what you get in the mail, saying you can qualify for $75,000 credit. That's usually just an advanced credit card. Generally, we've had the most success working with like a local bank that you're building a business relationship with, and you're building up your line of credit if it's non-secured over time. And typically, they're going to want you to have the same amount of liquid cash available that you're taking out. You build it up over time. But based on that question, Tony, I think it would make, at least in my opinion, a lot more sense to maybe just take out a mortgage on those properties, or even a HELOC that they have significant equity on. I think that's going to be a lot more accessible and allow them to expand their portfolio.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about if they have no mortgages, that might be the easiest path, right? Just go get a mortgage and you don't have to worry about the line of credit. But you mentioned that starting with the small and local banks. What does that process look like? So if I want to walk into a bank, what am I asking for? What documents do they need? Just kind of break it down for us.
I think it's all relationship based. I mean, this is really, when you're talking about local credit unions, local banks, this is really where it gets relationship based banking, where they need to have, you need to have experience with them. They need to see significant deposits coming in. Usually, you're building rapport with them over time. I think it's very unlikely for someone to normally just get a business or commercial line of credit that's not secured, just walking first time in a bank without building that rapport and that relationship over time. So, it really is relationship-based banking, and I think having a business with them, developing that over time.
Because if they were think of a retail store or something, if they're going to get a commercial business line of credit, they're probably putting up their inventory or something like that as collateral. Is that correct?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you have collateral, I mean, a true commercial line of credit or business line of credit that's not secure, so that's what we kind of talk about when we think of a line of credit. But if they're actually securing it against a business or, an asset, something like that, it'll be much easier to collateralize that. But in my opinion, again, I think they just collateralize the properties they own free and clear.
I think so too. I think that's the best option. And the only loan that I would say that they would be better off is if they actually have a brokerage account where they've saved it, invested a bunch of money into the stock market and then do a line of credit against that, because you're going to get the best rates because it's so liquid. But other than that, yeah, definitely going that route with putting the debt on the properties, because you're probably going to have to show them a lot less if you're trying just to get it unsecured loan.
They're in a good position.
Yeah, congratulations, you guys. You have lots of options. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go on to question number 2. Help me out here. I found an off-market deal 2 weeks ago and agreed in a price with seller. He said he was ready to move out and wanted this done quick. Let me know that I have not been pre-qualified, so I started my search for a lender, and today I spoke with a local one. I stopped by the seller's home today and told him that wheels were rolling and I'll have an answer for him upon a pre-approval of the loan. He raised the price $5,000 because he installed a new AC unit. He paid $4,000. I brought him down to 93.5 and he said, okay, just 3 minutes later, sorry, I'd rather not sell because a new home will be more expensive. So now, in order to avoid this from happening again, I realize I need to get them in contract as soon as possible. My dilemma is this one. Do I submit my application with the lender and find out if I'm pre-approved even though I don't have a home to buy, or just wait until a good deal is on the table again? Only reason I'm a little unsure about qualifying is due to my DTI, but at the same time, I don't want to hurry to pay the credit cards if not necessary. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of sellers we've been dealing with recently change their mind. I think in this scenario, I believe the question we're hearing is, you get qualified with the lender first and then find the deal, or vice versa. Is that the base question?
Yeah.
I think you always know what your financing options are, because otherwise, you don't want to be putting things under contract if you can't actually qualify for financing. And you need to know what those terms look like. We work with a lot of newer investors looking to build their portfolio. And often a concern is, well, I don't want to run my credit. I don't want my credit to be, but people really don't understand, I think, fundamentally, where your credit needs to be to qualify for loans and how minimal of an impact, a credit search or a credit report can actually have. We run our credit multiple times a month, all year round, and we're still able to stay above that 740, which is kind of the highest threshold, at least from a conventional standpoint. What do you guys think?
Well, the first thing is if you have credit card debt, I recommend paying that off because that is probably the worst debt that you can have. And I wouldn't wait until you decide to get a home or not. I would pay that off just because the interest rates on that are astronomical. So I would take care of that first, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach. I think understanding what your financing options should be step number one. It's easy to go out and get properties under contract, but like you said, if you get a property under contract with $500,000, which only pre-qualified for $250,000, now you're in a really sticky situation. So you've put down EMD or you've got some other contractual things you're obligated to, now you can't close. I think understanding that upfront is important. Now, if you are in that situation where you do have a good property that's a great deal under contract, and something that actually I talk about a lot is if you can't get qualified for that loan, you don't have the capital available, can you find a partner that does? Or can you get a hard money loan to kind of bridge that gap? So best route is getting the financing first. But if you get a good deal under contract and you can't get the financing, I would say find a partner and then find a hard money loan.
100% partnership is huge.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at the next question here. So this one comes from Derek Moore. Derek says, I have a duplex that I'm looking into that is off market. The numbers are good and the house appears to be in decent condition, though I haven't yet had a GC or an inspector walk through it yet. The duplex comes with active tenants that are current on the rents, allegedly. The place doesn't need much repairs, mostly cosmetic. Here are my questions. 1, should I pay to get the house appraised before I do any repairs? 2, when asking for the rent roll, is it normal to ask for bank statements showing that the rent was actually paid? And 3, is it a good idea to keep the tenants in the home if they are current on rent and have lived in the home for 2 or 3 years? So question number 1, let me just repeat it for you because I know that was a lot. So question number 1 is, should I get the house appraised before I make any repairs?
Well, I think it really depends on your buying situation, but generally the bank is going to require an appraisal and you want the appraisal to be at the highest value. So I would say you wait until the home is repaired and then you have the appraisal.
Mm-hmm. So, and maybe I'm reading into it, but he said it's an off-market deal. Maybe he's going with like some kind of hard money or something to that extent. So like say that he's going hard money or he's got the cash, would you still get an appraisal in that situation?
I mean, we buy a lot without having stuff appraised, but we also know what the value is. I mean, we run our own BPOs or we run comps to know. So, I mean, I think appraisals are good to have, but they're also very subjective in some cases. And if a bank requires an appraisal, then you're going to have that. But I think the more important thing is know your numbers, know your ARV, know the repairs that are going into it, because the appraisal really does matter in that case.
So if you're buying off market and say, for Derek's situation, say he's buying off market, it's a cash transaction or hard money transaction, would you still recommend he get an inspection done on that property or what's kind of your process?
Definitely get an inspection done. Yeah. An appraisal is an inspection to some degree on its own, but yeah, I think inspections are something we always recommend to everyone, no matter how experienced or new you are. Inspections, and gives you a better negotiation standpoint as well.
One of the things that we love to do is we'll do an inspection of the property and we'll send our handyman to meet the inspector on the same day. And our handyman will just walk behind the inspector, take it down of everything they're calling out. And then as soon as the inspection's done, we have a scope of work and a bid on what it would take to repair that inspection report. So I agree. I think it's a great negotiating tactic once you've got a property in your contract to kind of, allow the seller to be a little bit more reasonable, which was probably more difficult than last year because everything was going crazy. But I think as we get into the back half of this year and early next year, those will give you a little bit more weight.
You're so dialed in on your systems. You're going to bid and the inspection at the same time.
Oh, man, I love it. Yeah. Okay. So question number 2. When asking for the rent roll, is it normal to ask for bank statements showing the rent was actually?
With our experience with sellers, you get rent rolls in all shapes and forms. I mean, I don't know if it's inappropriate. I'm curious to hear what your guys' opinion is on this, but I think most of mom and pop owners maybe don't have their finances, prepared well enough to really give you a clean accounting, at least historically when we're buying rentals that are already rentals. Usually there's an issue there. They're not monitoring the income on it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, what we usually do is we send out an estoppel agreement to the tenants. So we have them fill out their name, their contact information. We have them state basically the things that are in the lease. So what's the rent you pay? When's the last time you paid rent? What repairs and maintenance need to be done in the property? Things like that. So we kind of match what they say with what the landlord said and kind of see how that correlates.
And for anyone that doesn't know, for estoppels, because I think this is more common in like the commercial space and maybe not so much in the residential, but basically the tenant's verifying that the lease is correct and they've been adhering to the lease. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. Yep.
What happens if there's a discrepancy between what the tenant says is happening and what the landlord is saying is happening?
Yeah, so then that's where you go back to the landlord and say, this is, sign what your tenant stated and signed, and then ask for the follow-up proof. So that's when it would probably be appropriate to ask for the bank statements, or, if they're using some kind of property management software where they can show that, the ACH went through and print out that report for you, or, canceled checks, copies of the canceled checks to show that the tenant did pay and what the amount was that they actually paid.
So actually, are you asking every seller to allow for tenant estoppels in every property?
If there is a tenant in place, yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great due diligence.
Yeah.
Around leaving a tenant.
Yeah. Is it a good idea to keep the tenants in the home if they are current on rent and have lived in the home for 2 or 3 years?
I think you have to, right? You have to adhere to that lease. You can't evict them if there's no grounds to do that. So if they've been a good tenant, why would you change that? I mean, if they were vetted appropriately, a lot of times when we inherit tenants, they don't have a history of being a great tenant, at least with properties that are underperforming. But if you get a good tenant, those are hard to come by. So keep them.
Yeah, I think in Derek's situation, he mentioned that he wanted to do repairs in the beginning. So I think it really depends on what kind of repairs you're doing. So if you need the tenants out to do a major remodel so that you can get the appraisal, refinance, pull your money back out, then yes, you probably want to ask the tenants to leave, but it really depends on the lease. Like if they are in a 2 or 3 year lease, you can't just ask them to leave. I mean, you can ask, but they don't have to leave. But if they have been paying, they keep the, property in good shape, you can do the repairs around them. You might as well hold on to a good tenant.
We've had a lot of tenants that have been extremely happy that we're coming in and repairing and improving their living situation as well. So, I mean, that also opens the door to, if there's been poor communication with the previous landlord, you can repair those relationships and improve the house and actually, rekindle that relationship with the tenant as well.
Yeah, one thing we've done too is giving the option to the tenant. Say, we're going to do these repairs. Your rent is going to increase to this amount on this date, or you may vacate at the end of your lease. So I think giving the option too is a great idea.
I love that idea. You find that most tenants end up staying?
Yeah, and another thing that we've done too with coming into a property where there's tenants in place, if they're paying way below market rent already, and there's not, maybe a couple things that need to be fixed, we do a slow rental increase too, which we've found people love that. We show them comps, like, okay, if you're going to move in to, a similar property that's, the same amount of bedrooms, bathrooms, same kind of upgrades, that we will, we're still going to be a little bit below market rent or at market rent. So if you move, you're going to end up paying more or the same amount plus your moving expenses. So then we slowly do a rental increase, maybe, $25 a month till they get to that point, or, $25 for 2 months, and the next 2 months, it's a $50 increase. So we've learned that has really helped a lot too, doing it that way to keep these tenants paying. We had one tenant that lived there for 30 years. And she was about $200 below market rent what it was, and that's what we did that gradual increase with her.
I think you just took the goal for longest occupancy.
Yeah.
30 years?
Yeah, and that was also, we bought it 5 years ago, so 35 years now. Yeah.
That is golden advice.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right, so next question for you, Zach. This one comes from Noni Munga. I got your name right, Noni. So Noni says, rookie question here. I've been looking at different deals out there in order to learn how to run the numbers, and I'm especially interested in rental properties that are turnkey. I used the BP rental calculator on this deal, and I recently saw a house that was on sale for $149,000 with a monthly rent of $1,150. Clearly, this doesn't meet the 1% rule. I run the numbers myself on the BP calculator and had a positive cash flow of $200 per month. My question is, what am I missing here? I thought that if the property doesn't meet the 1% rule, it would have a negative cash flow. Is this common to find with turnkey properties?
Man, I think today we have these conversations all the time because people want to invest based on rules of thumb. But I encourage them to invest based on their criteria and their goals. The 1% rule really doesn't exist in today's market. And if it does, maybe it's a property that's at a low price point that may not be in a good area. I can tell you with the many turnkey properties that we offer, there really isn't any at 1%. We can go into a C or D class area to try to, on paper, show a 1% rule. But remember, when you're evaluating based on those numbers and pro formas, that's just an anticipated performance. You could have a tenant that, moves out and the house is vacant for 6 months out of the year, and then it really doesn't matter at that point. So I guess the way that I would encourage people to approach their investing is to have a baseline criteria, know what numbers do work for them based on their financing and investing needs, and then try to obtain those, and also be conscious of the locations that they're investing in. I think the 1% rule really doesn't exist, to be quite honest, anymore. And I think if you are looking at 1% rule type properties, be cautious about the neighborhoods that they're in.
I think so many rookie investors, they come to us and they want to know, what market should I invest in? What city should I invest in? What's a good deal? Should I buy this or not? And a lot of times it's almost impossible for us to get those answers because, like you said, everyone has their own criteria, their own level of return they're looking for. So when people ask me that question, I always say it depends. Like, what's more important to you? Is appreciation more important to you? Is cash flow more important to you? Is the return on your investment more important to you? There's so many different things you can look at when you're evaluating a deal. And there are ways that the 1% rule, 2% rule, all these other rules can be beneficial. But at the end of the day, they're just rules of thumb. They're not laws of real estate investing. So to answer Noti's question, I think to reiterate what you said, it's like, what is your goal? If $200 in cash flow is good for you, and you're getting a decent cash on cash return from buying a deal, it doesn't matter if it's that 1% rule.
And to kind of touch on your point that, if you are hitting the 1% rule in today's market or in the last 2 years, that it's probably in, low income area, more affordable house and going to be a headache property. And I can completely attest to that where, I was buying $20,000 duplexes that were way more than hitting the 1% rule, but they were headache properties. And also I was not hitting the 50% rule. So it could be you're supposed to have your expenses 50% of what the monthly rental income is. And since the property taxes were so high in this market, that you weren't hitting that rule. So it just goes to show that you can't just rely on one rule of thumb or even one ratio or one statistic. It's all about what your criteria is, what your goal is, and then kind of building out all of the, ratios, the rules, and then pulling from that as to building the big picture instead of just one thing.
I think when a lot of people start shopping for investment property, especially the rookie investor that's just building out their criteria, it's okay not to have all of your criteria in the very beginning because I think that's a dynamic process. But often they're looking at pro formas and looking at properties and saying, trying to match that to make sense for them instead of coming up with their criteria first. And I think you build that over time. But it's all about taking action at the end of the day and, critiquing your investing goals.
All right, so I'm going to jump into the next question. This one comes from Christina Iacovoni, and I hope I got your last name right, Christina. So Christina says that she's about to close on her first property. It's a turnkey condo with tenants and a property manager already in place. The original plan was to self-manage, but keeping the PM was part of the requirement of the deal, and the numbers work, so here I am. Do I actually get the keys to the condo, or does the PM and the tenant keep them? Am I required a 90-day notice to terminate with the PM? I'm sorry. She says, I am required a 90-day notice to terminate with the PM, but am required to keep them through the end of the lease. Tenant is required a 60-day notice. Should I provide contact info to the tenant and build a relationship if I'm thinking of self-managing after June? I'm not required to escrow insurance. Is it better to pay out of pocket annually versus escrow with the mortgage payment? What else should a newbie know? So I'm gonna try and rephrase that so I get the big questions here. Okay, so the first question is, does she actually get the keys to the condo once she closes it, or does a PM and the tenant keep them? And then should she start building a relationship with that tenant now, knowing that once that contract is able to terminate, she plans to self-manage? And then is there anything else she should know? And the insurance, she should escrow that.
10 and 1 questions. So we'll try to get through them. I think this is very applicable to your last point about it just depends. I mean, first of all, consult with your local attorney. I mean, state laws vary, depending on, how you interact with the tenant. I mean, personally, we don't not self-manage any of our properties at this point because our time is better spent building our business. And so We want to have management, but have right management in place. Typically, the keys go right to the management. I never see those keys whenever we buy a property, nor do I want them. I don't want to have them. We don't engage with our tenants. I personally like the anonymity of not having tenants know who we are. They should be engaging with the management. That's why you have a professional property management in place. As far as escrowing, this is one thing for tax and insurance. We actually pay it on our own. We don't escrow with mortgages, whether this is a conventional loan or commercial property that we buy. We always pay our own tax and insurance because I just don't like, even though it's more convenient, I don't like having the bank, they prepay it basically and they collect it up front. So you're paying it in advance. And that can be a lot of money when you have a lot of property. But you also need to remember to do that if your taxes are due twice a year. When is your insurance? Don't let that lapse. You don't ever want that to lapse. So it depends.
And I'm the other way. Like, I'd like to have my insurance and taxes like compounded with my mortgage monthly payment because I like the convenience of it. And I'm the king for getting billed. So I know that like I'll be the first guy who doesn't have insurance on any of his rental properties because he's forgetting to make that payment. So I do like that convenience. But your point too about like the manager having the keys, it's like, yeah, it's the owner. Obviously you own the property. So if you want to get the keys, you can get the keys. But the whole reason you're paying this property manager is so that they can hold the keys to when they're supposed to. We've sold off all of our long-term rentals, but when we did have ours, I didn't know what any of my tenants looked like, right? Like they were in multiple states away. So if I bumped into them on the street, we wouldn't know each other from some other random person. I love that.
I'm a little bit different. I like to maintain control of the property. So at closing, I like to get a set of keys. I like to have the tenant's contact information. And I like to have a copy of the lease, like all upfront, instead of it just going directly to the property manager. I like to have those things with me too, so that I always have some kind of control over my property, especially as you're starting out. I think your first property, even, I understand as you get to build and grow and scale, it's just not feasible to have this rack in your basement of all the keys for all your units. But, yeah, I think it's perfectly acceptable to ask for keys at closing for the property that you are purchasing. But when the tenant moves out or anything like that, you're going to be probably putting in a new lock, getting new keys on too for the property. As far as the property taxes and insurance goes with escrow, right before BPCon started on Saturday, we released an episode about my property tax bill that wasn't paid. And I've actually had a couple people come up and talk to me about it already. Great timing for me to vent on a podcast and to release right before BPCon, but it was where a property tax bill wasn't paid. And Tony and I talked about it, and he's like, well, you should just put them all into escrow. So that's something I have to talk to my commercial lender about. On the residential side, it's very easy to have that happen, but on the commercial side, it wasn't. And I think one reason that I was always kind of against it was that you're paying the money up front, where instead it's just one bill, you pay it in the year. So, if you're purchasing property and then your insurance is due usually you pay it up front. You pay a year's of property taxes up front, years of insurance up front. Well, then if you're escrowed, you start paying and adding to the following years, where instead, I could use that money for something else and then, the end of the year, pay it. So that's kind of my reason to be against it. But after having a heart attack, I'll probably be more towards escrow.
So is that how you get tenants to stay for 35 years?
Yeah.
But that's a good clarification point, actually. I think generally on like conventional loans, single family, small multi, it's expected for the lender to escrow those.
Yeah, it's usually almost always required, even like don't have an option.
As we see kind of on the commercial side, you can grow your portfolio. Sometimes they will refuse to escrow it. They won't even escrow it into it. Like our property management for some of the retail centers we buy, they actually pay the tax and insurance, but it's not technically escrowed into the loan. But yeah, I'm right there with you. We need something to make sure that we're actually paying it on time.
So I just want to touch on that last piece. So is there anything else maybe a newbie should know about buying turnkey properties?
Turnkey is a great way for people to get started, to diversify, especially if their local market is too expensive to get started in, or to scale beyond what they're doing on their own. Even if they're an active investor, Turnkey is a great way for them to just add doors to their portfolio. strategically, which in my opinion is kind of the name of the game here. I think what we're all trying to achieve. But do know who you're working with. You obviously want to invest in the right locations with the right people. Just because you're buying turnkey does not mean that you are safeguarded from any normal risk that real estate would have. You still have tenant issues potentially. So just know that going into it, I think that's the biggest disconnect when we work with investors that are wanting to buy turnkey, is just thinking that this is going to be completely passive, and it still is active to some degree, even if you have a great tenant property management setup. But it can be a great way for people to get started, avoid some pitfalls, diversify and scale over time.
So let me ask this question, Zach. So like we invest in Airbnbs, vacation rentals, and it's a very kind of sexy asset class right now. A lot of people looking to get into it, but I also caution and let people know that it's not for everyone. Like not everyone should be buying vacation rentals and managing themselves, because there's definitely more work that goes into that asset class versus others. So who would you say maybe is turnkey not for? Like what kind of investor does it maybe not work for?
Oh, that's a great question, because I want to conform it to everybody.
Yeah.
Come buy a house with us. No, I think the person that can do better on their own, being an active investor, that understands the risks of being an active investor, that really enjoys that too. I mean, short-term rentals, they can be fully, they're full on management, right? I mean, even if you have management, that's why you pay them 20 to 30%, possibly more. But the people that are really excited and passionate about doing their own thing with real estate, they don't want to be a passive investor. You probably can obtain better returns actively investing, but there is more work and potential risk with that, of course.
And the thing I always say is like to be good at anything in investing, you need three things: time, desire, and ability. And if you're missing any one of those key ingredients, like you're going to struggle. And if you can, fill that gap with a turnkey company or property manager, whatever it is, you'll probably find more success. Because if you don't have the time, it's going to be very difficult to find an undervalued asset, to rehab it, to get it stabilized, to manage those tenants long term. If you don't have the desire, like even if you have the time and the ability, you're going to hate doing it, right? So you need to mix all three of those things.
And it's just important to be honest with yourself, I think. That's excellent points. Be honest with what your goals, what your time, what your experience level is, and then take action accordingly.
And it's such a great way for new investors to get started, to learn from what other people are doing. You get the whole team, you get everything there so that you can say, okay, this is how this operates, this is how this operates. And then if you want to go on to start growing yourself or something, you have already kind of watched firsthand those resources, the team you need kind of go into play. So I think for rookies, turnkey is a great option just to get started. Especially if you've been in analysis paralysis, you've been delaying taking action because you don't have time, and it's been years that you've been wanting to do this, like that, I think is like a perfect candidate for getting into turnkey.
The mindset aspect of it, actually, I'm so happy that you said that, because so many people, and especially in the BP community, they get stuck. They're excited about real estate. They get stuck in the analysis paralysis. That first property, in my opinion, is not important financially. It's important mentally and emotionally. And if turnkey is an easy access way to get you started, then do that. We have so many investors that come back years later, and they haven't bought from us for 5 or 6 years, but they've gone out and built this insanely large portfolio and been extremely successful. And they're like, hey, those first couple of properties gave me the confidence to go out and do that. And I love hearing those stories. So thanks for mentioning that point.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Just one last question about turnkey is, what are maybe like 3 questions that someone should be asking a turnkey provider when vetting them?
I definitely would say track record is the most important. Let's talk about, the markets and make sure that their model and their business meets your criteria, because not all turnkey is created equal. People work in different markets. They will have different niches in business. Some people do, short-term, long-term, multifamily, new construction and development. So just make sure, one, that business, I think, matches your goals and criteria, at least fundamentally. Make sure that they have a quality track record, and you want to check references and due diligence, just like with anyone that you jump into business with. And the third question is, do these properties make sense for my criteria? And if they do, then I think you take action.
Well, that was great. And thank you so much for joining us here live at BPCon. Can you tell everyone where they can find out some more information about you and possibly reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can visit renttoretirement.com. That's rent, retirement.com. We have all links to social media. We'd be happy to talk about anything you're doing investing. We do short-term rentals. We do multifamily, new construction. We have our hands in a lot of stuff, and we're here to add value. Please reach out. And you guys, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. BPCon 2022.
I'm Ashley at Welcome Rentals, and he's Tony at Tony J. Robinson on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will be back on Wednesday with a guest.